Hello everybody, welcome back to Layout. Let's have a look at the further progress that has been made on the lift bridge. As I mentioned in the previous video, I'm still waiting for certain parts to arrive, and so what I have been doing next is working on the retaining walls, which you can see here. So those have been painted and weathered. Same on this side. The other thing I did was work a bit on these support blocks. So I've given those a concrete color, same as the block below. And also here I carved in a couple of cracks through which rust from the armor is coming through. So I've weathered the blocks as well. And those are now fixed in place. So the other thing I did on the bridge was I've added these strips in between the rails and also on the sides here. So those have been painted in black, which is also what I will be using as a color for the entire bridge. So this is supposed to mimic metal, so metal parts of the bridge where the track is mounted on. So then let's have a look at the bridge itself. I've added a lot of structural elements, like these white beams. Obviously all of this will be painted in black. The other thing I added was, if I film it from above, these horizontal strips that essentially make it look more like a type of girder bridge. And so these horizontal strips are supposed to be falling over these strips here, which I will show you in a minute. So I've added the same horizontal strips on the centerpiece of the bridge as well. The other thing I did was add these beams in between here as well. Yeah, and right now I'm working on adding these vertical beams. And then the parts that I'm waiting for are these sort of open web beams that go diagonally across here. So this is the bridge put in place. And if I zoom in here on which I sort of call the girder part of the bridge, you see that these horizontal plates fall nicely into place. So I think that looks really good. So the open web beams finally arrived, and I've added them to the bridge. So they are sitting diagonally here. And so those have been added on both the front and the back of each of the towers. So the next thing will be to work on the actual mechanism of wheels, flywheels, electromotors, etc., and steel cables and stuff that will be lifting the bridge. So, and as you can see, I have started cutting out some polystyrene sheets that go on top of each of the towers. And then the idea is to have an assembly that looks something like this, where you have flywheels and electromotors, and you'll have two of those, and then so from these flywheels steel cables will be hanging down and will be attached to the center part of the bridge here. This is the same assembly of flywheels and electromotors as shown before. The flywheels I have purchased at TG Train. So those are looking like this, and I have actually glued 3 of them together. So I will have 3 steel cables running over them. And that will be looking something like this. So I've just taken some wire and wrapped it around, and so that will give the impression of a cable running over the flywheels. For the electromotors, I thought to simply buy some in my train shop, which are these. But as it turned out, the dimensions of these are way too small. And so I think I will have to scratch build these myself in a somewhat larger size. So I went on the internet to look for typical dimensions of heavy power electromotors, and as you can see, there are electromotors that have a height of 1.30 meters thereabouts, and a length of almost 2.5 meters. So those are quite big electromotors, but at least it gives me an idea of the dimensions in which I need to model them. So for the hull of the electromotors I will be using this plastic tube, which has about the right diameter. And as you can see, I've cut off 4 pieces that will represent a motor of with a length of around 1.30 meters in reality. Which is similar to the dimensions I've shown before. And then there will be a couple of other bits and pieces that I will be gluing on. So hopefully I will be able to model somewhat realistically looking electromotors. So these are all the parts that I will be needing for the entire mechanism for lifting the bridge. So we have the electromotors in the center, we have the transmission next to that, and then we have the flywheel or the flywheels at the end. I have put one of the mechanisms together and placed on one of the towers, and I will show you that in a minute. So this is the entire mechanism put together, and you can also see the reason why I needed to use a transmission between the flywheels and the electromotor, and that is because the flywheels need to sit right on the edge of the tower, and if I wouldn't have used the transmission, the electromotor would have been in line and they would have sat also right on the edge of the tower, and that I thought was a bit unrealistic. That wouldn't work really well. So now by doing it like this, as you can see, I can have the electromotors placed more away from the edge of the tower. And I think this will work a bit better. And I think it also looks a bit more realistic. These are the counterweights that I modeled. They have been made from polystyrene foam, and they will be hung off on the inside of each of the towers to act as the counterweight for the lift bridge. So it's just square blocks, and I've added sliding beams on either side, and on top I've added mounting mechanisms also on either side. And as you can see, it's 3 tubes glued together since I have 3 cables on either side. So I have temporarily fixed the counterweights in place using some painter's tape. So that allows me to glue the sliding beams for the counterweights in place. So this one is not glued in place yet, but the others are glued. And so this counterweight will then be sliding along these beams here. And if I zoom in on the top, you can see how the mounting mechanism will work. So the cables will go over the flywheel here and then down there into the 3 tubes where they will be fixed to the counterweight. Alright, so this is what the platform on the top of the tower turned out like. So as you can see, I have put a fence around it. Here is a gate, entrance gate for, let's say, maintenance workers to be able to access the lifting mechanism here. What you can also see is that I have cut a hole in the center, and that will be covered by a grating, so that people working on top here can look down, for example, have a look at the counterweight below it. So this is the entire bridge finished, at least the construction part of it. So the painting and the weathering still remains. But as far as all of the structural elements, all of the construction, that has been done. So let me zoom in on some of the parts that I have been adding. To begin with, there is a ladder, which you can see here, that goes up to the tower and up to the plateau level where the lift mechanism is. So hence the gate on the top here and the fence around the plateau. So the same is done on the other side. Also here a ladder. And on this side I have also added the cables already. So they are going down here to a mounting point over here. So let me zoom in. By the way, nothing is fixed yet because I need to take it apart for the painting. I haven't done that on this side, but it will be the same on this side as well. So this is what it turned out like. Yeah, really happy with the entire bridge. I think it turned out very nice, very realistic, I think. And yeah, I like all of the elements that I added. So you can see there's a lot of beams. It's really busy, which is one of the things I liked or I wanted to have. So yeah, I think I'm quite happy with this result. So, and as I mentioned, the next job is painting. So I'll be covering that in the next video.